with your redox potential, which is, if we still have some time, I'll get into that a little bit. Our bodies and our cells work off of negative and positive charges. So it's just a battery, and that battery needs to be charged. And that battery gets charged naturally from the sun. And that's what truly makes everything in your cells strong. But if we think about like the immune system, if we're talking about people being sick and getting issues, we want to blame the sun and the tick and the bug and the virus and the bacteria. Although mitochondria, we have trillions of them in our body running everything, they're a bacteria. It's kind of a bizarre thing to think about, but we have trillions of bacteria actually running our body. And when you can get your battery charged strong, which is your redox charge, that's a quantum term, your body should be able to fight anything. So that means if you do get Lyme bacteria in your bloodstream, or COVID, or the flu, or a virus, or bacteria, your immune system is supposed to be that strong to then take that, toxin or intruder or invader in, create antibodies, and you might get a little symptom like a fever or feel a little low or something for a couple of days. I'm not saying you're ever going to live life without any of those type of symptoms, but you shouldn't have to come down with a chronic disease.
Episode 23 on the Holocene podcast, and today we are joined by Jolie. Jackie is a certified quantum health practitioner. She also studied under Dr. Jack Kruse, who we're a massive fan of on this show. In today's episode, we discuss her battle with Lyme disease and how she overcome chronic Lyme using and improving her light environment. She's definitely a bit of an expert when it comes to this topic. We discuss Redox, we discuss the mitochondria, blue light, her protocol and what she follows on a daily basis to maximize her mitochondrial health. And there's just so much jam-packed in this interview, so I hope you enjoy as ever. Also, please like, share and subscribe. We want to get this information out there the best we can. Getting guests like Jackie on the show is really kind of taking this podcast to a whole new level, in my opinion, and I want to make sure that her wisdom is shared as much as possible. So I don't think you're going to be disappointed by this one, and I hope you enjoy.
Me, really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here.
No worries. So this interview, we're going to talk about light. For anyone who knows you or has followed you before, this is your passion. This is what you do. I was quite interested in your story. Do you mind just sort of going into what's led you to what we're going to talk about today?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a good way to start so that people can try to relate or understand when we start talking about, detoxing and just ultimate health. I am an equine body worker by day and a certified quantum health practitioner by life is my little slogan I like to say. So I have been working on horses as kind of like a physical therapist for like the last 12 years and always considered myself a relatively quote unquote healthy person. I worked outside, rode horses, thought I ate a pretty good diet, exercise, did all the things that, normal, regular society tells us to do to be healthy. Didn't see the doctor much, didn't take medications. And about 5 years ago, I got diagnosed with Lyme disease. And I did have a tick that bit me. And I am fortunate that my doctor that I went to, we caught it rather quickly and acutely, which was good. But the normal medical paradigm to treat Lyme disease, which my doctor recommended, was to take 3 months of antibiotics. And at that time, because of my career and everything that I learned about the body working as a whole, even from the mammal side and the human mammal side, I really followed more of a holistic, natural approach using herbal tinctures or, exercise or anything natural that I could find to try to keep my body healthy. And at that point, I'd probably had maybe antibiotics, a handful of times in my 35 years of living, and definitely nothing longer than like a week at a time of antibiotics. And I had already known at that time how much antibiotics could really ruin your microbiome and your gut health and leave you with a bunch of other side effects and problems after taking the antibiotics. So when she recommended the 3 months, I was like, oh, I don't really want to do that. It was not resonating with me. And she did suggest, like, we'll go and do some research and see what you think and come back and we can talk about the prescription and see where you want to go with it. So I did some research, and everything that I was finding by people that had used antibiotics for Lyme, even if the antibiotics had killed the Lyme, which was a very small percentage, the people were left with so much debilitating problems that they had to try to fix from the antibiotics ruining their gut health, that I still was just not wanting to take that path. And I had come across Dr. Buhner's work, which he was an herbalist, and he'd been working with the Lyme community for 20 years. And he had come up with an herbal tincture protocol that a lot of people were getting great success in killing the Lyme bacteria. And so I decided to take that path first. I did not tell my doctor that I wasn't going to take the antibiotics, because when I went in to see her that day to pick up the prescription, I said, look, I did some research. There's not a lot of proof showing that the antibiotics actually kill and heal the Lyme long term. If I take these antibiotics for 3 months and I come back to you and we retest and I have Lyme disease still, then what do we do? Oh, well, we just put you on 3 more months of antibiotics. And so I was like, okay, that doesn't work. So I went home and started doing my herbal protocol from Dr. Buhner. I did that about 6 months, and I took the whole year to kind of just cut vices out, coffee, any type of alcohol, which I wasn't a very big drinker at that time anyways. Taking like herbal adaptogens, mushrooms, dandelion root, stuff to help your liver, gut health, and things like that, just to help your immune system be strong while you're killing the Lyme. Yeah. As I was coming down through healing the Lyme disease, and we were getting the test back of negative, so I was killing it and it was working. My doctor still thought at the time that I was using the antibiotics, which I was not. I wasn't being completely truthful yet. I wanted to kind of get through my own, R&D with it. I had a friend of mine that's been an angel in my life, my whole life, giving me just really good tips and suggestions on health. And he had come across Dr. Jack Kruse's information on light and mitochondria and quantum health. I'd never heard anything about any of that before, but I trusted my friend. And he was like, Jackie, he's got information on there about Lyme. And he was like, we had everything right about exercise and, paleo and good food, but we didn't know the light component. And I was like, well, that sounds interesting. So I just started listening to some podcasts, that was free information. And everything just started hitting my gut on like a energetic level of resonating, like, oh, like this makes sense. Because it's such our natural instincts of what our DNA and genes are used to, of being born and living outside to nature's rhythms and rules. But we've gotten so far away from that in our modern life. And so at the time, I had spent thousands of dollars and hours, on supplements and vitamins and protocols and exercise and the whole long complex list that all of us modern human beings are like tying ourselves to and being frustrated and exhausted with. And when I was learning everything about light, I was like, okay, well, the sun is free. Nature is free.
For now, it's free. If I had their way, it wouldn't be, but for now.
You're right. Let's hope it stays that way. And so I was like, well, what do I have to lose by just trying a couple of the habits that Kruse recommended? Of course, sunrise being like the ultimate thing that you can do for your health, and making your nights dark, and trying to stay away from EMFs and mitigating Wi-Fi and Bluetooth and these things. And so I was like, okay. So because once I healed the Lyme disease, the bacteria was gone, but a lot of my symptoms that I had, like irritability, fatigue, hormones were on the floor. So then my doctor wanted to give me replacement hormones for the rest of my life. I was 35 years old. I was like, no way. Like, I'm not signing up for that. I still had all these like symptoms left over, even though I had killed the Lyme disease. I had succeeded, but then I was still having all of these health issues. I didn't understand the Redox method and connection to light and mitochondria, and what my bad light life had been for 20 years for me to even get Lyme disease in the first place, which has to do with redox. And so the very first thing I started doing was saying, okay, for 30 days, I'm just going to get up first thing, not look at any other light or phone or anything in the house, grab my dogs and go for a walk at sunrise. That's what I'm going to do every day for 30 days. And then at night, try to make my nights dark. Like, those were the 2 rules that were the most important thing from Kruse. And so within about 2 weeks, I did start noticing like just having a little bit more energy in the morning and throughout the day, and actually wanting to wake up and see the sunrise. I was not a morning person before this.
Yeah.
But it's getting easier and easier. And one of the biggest things that I noticed within a 3-week period of doing this was, in my whole 35 years of living, I had never been hungry in the morning. I was not this person that was naturally hungry. You know, you meet them every day, like, oh, I'm ravenous and starving in the morning. I'd never had that. And I was always doing the like intermittent fasting, you know, and waiting all day to eat and only have coffee and then eat a big meal late at night in front of blue light, which I didn't know was a bad thing until I learned about light. And in 3 weeks of walking at sunrise and making my nights dark, my stomach started to growl every morning, and I was ravenous for breakfast. And so I was like, something just changed in my physiology that hadn't been there in 20 something years, just by going out and seeing the sunrise, and within 3 weeks. So I was like, there's definitely something to this. I have to keep going. And of course that continued. And now I'm almost 5 years down the road on this light life change of my life. And all of my hormones came back to regular numbers. In fact, optimized higher. My libido came back with strong force and vitality. My hunger is still there in the morning. My energy for the day is still there. I'm more of this, I was never like a negative person or anything like that, but I have more of this like zest and inspiration for life. I have a stronger spiritual and emotional connection actually to life and my body, not just the physical side. I got into this to get the physical changes and the health improvements, but the mental and emotional and spiritual connections that ended up connecting and becoming stronger as well were this huge bonus that I wasn't expecting, and that I hope to continue see increase throughout all of this. So that was kind of just my initial story of dealing with Lyme and getting into having a healthier light life. Of course, there's lots of different aspects to add in besides the 2 rules of sunrise and making your nights dark, and we can get into some of that in the talk today. But I eventually just got to the point where I was like, everybody has to hear this message. I mean, it's almost like sharing the message of Jesus Christ. You know, when people get really up on religion and wanting to share about God and Jesus, it's literally the same feeling. Meredith Oki, that runs Quantum Biology Collective, which I did get certified through for Quantum Health Practitioning, she said the statement of like, once you know the truth about light, you're almost obligated to share it, because it's been hidden and forgotten for so long, and it's such an integral piece of the health of all of us as humans on this planet, and we're all connected by a collective energy, that as soon as we start sharing it, and I don't know how long you've been following some of this information now, but I'm starting to see it pop up everywhere. And so it's that idea of the 100th monkey, right? We only need 1/3 of people to start sharing the message, and it's going to actually start changing the whole collective of the species for us to be able to improve and move forward. So that's what I'm here for, and always happy to do these interviews to be able to spread the message of light.
Awesome. I've been into this for maybe a year and a half, and I come across it through your work. Actually, you were the first, and then I went through Jack Kruse and loads of others. I actually interviewed the CEO of Block Blue Light, Daniel Abbott.
Yep,
yeah. So he was. I interviewed him a couple of
company. I love his blue blocking glasses. These are from his company. They're my favorite.
Yeah, they're awesome. I got 3 pairs. I bought the yellow, the orange, and the red as well. But yeah, he was awesome. We've not had a lot of viewings on his podcast. It's probably one of my least performing ones, but I thought it was one of the best. The information is incredible. So the word is spreading, but only in certain circles. So the sort of people, I guess, that were following me for other things, they haven't really kind of picked up on this yet. But I think you're right. It's definitely growing. The thing that I found when I started looking into it, it's very overwhelming and stressful, because light is kind of everywhere. You live in the UK, it gets dark stupidly early in the winter, and it gets light late. So I'm up like 2 hours before the sun comes up. So that's like a 2-hour period where I'm going to be in artificial light, whether it's my red light panel, which I actually bought from Daniel as well, which is really good, or whether I'm using the lamps I've got. I've got a lamp here. It's like it's from him as well, actually. It blocks the blue, which is great. But you have to be in light. And if otherwise I'm sat in the dark for 2 hours, that's not great. And I am a morning person, so I don't want to get up later. And then if you go to like the supermarket in the winter after work, the light is ridiculously, bright. So it was very stressful for me. And then I've kind of learned little tricks along the way, and I've managed things. But any kind of advice to someone on if they live somewhere like I do, or in North America or Canada, how do they kind of manage that? Because like I said, it's not easy.
No, it's not easy, especially during winter time or being in places like where you are, higher latitudes. Of course, you could always take Jack Kruse's very blunt message to just move.
He's getting blunter actually as he goes on, isn't he?
Yeah. I do recommend if you live in a big city, it might be wise to move for several reasons, because it's very hard to defeat all the toxins of everything that we can see and not see that are involved in big cities. But a couple of things, and not everybody likes these answers either. You just have to try to do your best. Number one, as far as health-wise, you actually can get outside and use the cold during your winter time of wherever you live, but then also in places where you are in higher latitudes. The cold can actually help strengthen your mitochondria as well, which is what's running our cells, and they are respondent to light, but they're also respondent to the environment around us, which is what quantum is. So they can respond to the cold and the hot temperatures of the season so that it helps keep their clocks on time, and also strengthen that mitochondria. So the cold can also help with the mitochondria strength, but then on the light key, the darkness is just as important as the light, because doing this now for a few years, everybody's like, oh yeah, I love the sun. I'll get out and get as much light as possible during the day. Jackie, thank you so much for that confirmation. But they'll still come in at night and be on their computers and TV and all the lights on in the house. And so you're literally ruining everything that you just did by going outside in nature. So a couple of suggestions, obviously, like what I'm wearing and what you just talked about. Blue blocking glasses are a great way for biohacking. So I keep a cheap pair in my car so that, yeah, if I have to run into the grocery store at nighttime, I try to avoid that in my schedule, but sometimes it happens. That way I can just pop those on, run into the, grocery store. I try to keep my body covered as well. So remember that our skin and our eyes are our solar panel. So the skin's going to also respond to the light outside. So if you're going into the grocery store at night, try to, throw a jacket on, pants on. You could wear a ball cap, and then throw your blue blocking glasses on. If you're in your house, like you said, if you're getting up before sunrise, which I have a lot of like equine clients and people that do that as well, you're still going to want to make sure just whatever light you turn on is some type of orange and red wavelength. So, the red light bulb that you have, or a red light panel, there's red night lights now. I even have like a headlamp that has a red light option in it. So I use that for reading at night or walking around the house, because then it's like not super bright either. If you're up 2 hours before sunrise or up late at night, like even if you have a big red light panel on, because I've done that before, sometimes that brightness of the red light can still be very stimulating for the eyes. So bringing it down to like a little night light or a headlamp brings you enough light to do what you're doing on the computer or reading, but it's not too bright to keep it stimulating. So those would kind of be my suggestions. But I mean, really, at the end of the day, light is so foundational that it is very important to have that sunrise and light from the sun throughout the day. And then you have to have the darkness piece. Like, it's just, those are the two nature's rules. If you can just do those two things, you will change your health and optimize over everything else. And just like when you said, it's very stressful in the beginning of paying attention to all the things and having the stress. And I think it's even one of the biggest roadblocks in this quantum health of trying to teach people about light, because nature is actually so simple, and the story and the lesson is actually really simple. But we've lived this environment now of society making everything so difficult and so complex that when you tell people, like, you just got to get light during the day and then make it dark at night, they're like, nah, it can't be that easy. It can't be that easy to heal my cancer. It can't be that easy to heal my Lyme disease. It can't be that easy to heal my skin cancer. It can't be that easy. And it really is, because our bodies have the ability and innate programs to heal itself, and it always wants to thrive and heal if it's given the right environment. Just like in my story, I hadn't seen the sunrise for 20 something years, and I was never hungry for 20 something years. Within 3 weeks, my body was hungry. So that already shows the quick and rapid healing abilities of light and how powerful it is. We have forgotten that you can Google right now, what's the fastest and the strongest natural energy source in existence? And it's light. There's nothing faster and there's nothing stronger. And so we have just forgotten how that plays into our human physiology.
Yeah. Do you ever skip a day? Like, has there ever been a time where you're like, I can't be bothered, or you're busy, you've got something on and you don't want to wear those glasses? And if you do, how do you kind of mitigate the negative effects of that? Or do you not really worry too much if you have a day off here and there?
So I'm going to give a couple of different answers to that question, because I've actually had some friends recently diagnosed with cancer, and they were open to listening to the information about the light. And I had one of my friends towards the end say, okay, like, this is great. I'm going to start implementing, the sunrise and more light during the day, and I'll get the blue blocking glasses and this step and this step and this step. And he looked at me and he said, well, Jackie, like, with life, like, sometimes it's so hard to keep everything 100% perfect. With these changes, like, do you need to be all in, was his question. Do you need to be all 100%? And I said, look, in life, we have mistakes. We're here to enjoy ourselves as well. And I said, right now, I live my life probably 85, 90% perfect. But also right now, I'm healed and I'm healthy. I don't have a diagnosis anymore. When you're sick and you have a diagnosis, you need more light and you need to be more all in. And that comes from your desire to live and your desire to be optimal and live a long, healthy, vital life, because we're all meant for that until the day that we drop dead, like, barring some crazy accident or something, And so the answer to that question is, now that I'm very healthy and I have taken the time to be really strict and stringent in the first 2 to 3 years of changing my life, now I can kind of fudge, a night going out to dinner with my friends and I forget my blue blocking glasses and I stay up a couple hours later, right? The funny thing is, though, now that I've gotten so good on light life, I can feel the differences the next day. It doesn't mean I'm like completely like hungover by artificial light, but I can tell the little bit of sluggishness, the little bit of like brain not quite firing as quick. But I am at the point where my redox and my mitochondria are running like Ferraris now instead of Priuses. So it just picks up immediately. And the next thing I do is I just make sure I see the sunrise the next day and keep those circadian rhythms getting back on the reset button. That's how quick and fast it is. So those are kind of just my suggestions. Sometimes you're traveling and going over time zones, or sometimes you go out with friends at night and you don't wear your glasses, or you stay up late, or you have a glass of alcohol. Like, the next best thing to do is just get up the next day and see the sunrise. Sundays are usually my very relaxing day, like today. And so sometimes I'll sleep in and come outside at like a half an hour or 40 minutes after the sunrise. We don't have to be, type A and perfect. Light is that strong. So in the morning, if you can just get out within at least that hour or so of the sunrise, you're still doing the right thing. Even if it's a rainy day like today or cloudy, you can still open up your windows and get the light to come in that way too, if you're not feeling good or tired or hungover or something, So there are little helps that you can do to still get that light in because of how strong it is and how quick it works.
How long do you recommend being out in the sun in the morning? Obviously, as long as possible. If people are busy, they've got...
The answer is always going to be as much light as you can get, because us as modern humans now, we are so light deficient. So the longest you can as possible is great. I think if you're healthy without a diagnosis, if you can get 15 to 20 minutes, if you've got to go to work after that or something, then that's ideal. And then take your 15 to 20 minute light breaks throughout the day as well outside. But again, if you're sick, if you have a diagnosis, you're going to need much more light, especially the red light at sunrise and the red light at sunset, because that's truly a lot of the healing light. You need UV as well in the middle of the day, but that infrared and red light at the beginning and end of the days are really incredibly powerful. So if you can get like an hour, if you have a diagnosis, that would be optimal.
Yeah. Okay. So one of the things I had when I come across your work initially, I ran my own company. I was in control of my light. I could spend as much time outside as I wanted. I'm now back at work and I'm in a blue lit office, and it has become a lot harder. And I have noticed a difference. I've clearly noticed it. And a few of the issues that I had some years ago, I feel that they're creeping back in. So I'm, I genuinely believe all of this, but it is hard. But as we're going into spring, I mean, the clocks go forward in 2 weeks. So that is, it's like a breath of fresh air. Honestly, I can't wait. The only thing is when the sun comes up in the summer here, it comes up early, like 4 o'clock. So there's one thing getting up at 5:30. I get up at 5:30 every day. But if you get up 5:30, 6 for the sunrise, it's, that's one thing. But getting up at 4, but what I was doing in the summer is I was still getting up at 5:30, but I'd just go straight outside. So maybe I didn't get the best part of it, but I did notice the difference, drinking my coffee outside. In the winter, I'll use the red light, drink my coffee, read a book in the morning in front of the red light, which is great. And then I'll go outside when the sun comes up. But in the summer, I'm outside straight away. And I really did notice a big difference there. So, but one of the things that is a big problem, that, taking away the obvious that you've said, the morning and having it, dark at night, is if you do work in an office and the blue lit, the blue light is on top of you all day, you've got the computer in front of you all day, because it's daytime, it's probably easier to think, it's fine, because it is daytime. It doesn't feel as acute as at night. What do you recommend to people that are in an office that do have to sit on a computer most of the day? Is it just take these regular breaks as much as you can?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, on both the light side and even on a physical therapy side, the studies already show that like sitting is almost as bad as smoking cigarettes for your body. And also not getting enough sunlight is also now proven to be more deadly than even smoking cigarettes. There was a really big study done by the French back in the 80s proving that. And so when you're working in an office, you need to make sure that you get that sunrise time before you go to work. And then when you're at work, you really need to take, just like people would take cigarette breaks, like take the care for yourself and for your body because you want to live and be healthy, to go outside and get those light breaks. And you're also going to get a movement break, right? Like you're standing up out of your chair and moving and walking to wherever amount of time it takes you to go outside. And even while you're outside, maybe do like some stretching and some rotations and a little bit of movement, or take a quick walk somewhere, take the stairs instead of the elevator, all those recommendations, even for your physical movement to get energy. That's also very good and beneficial for your mitochondria as well. Again, you want to try to do as much time with the light, with no sunglasses, no sunscreen, as little bit of clothing as possible, and no contacts. And so that's because all of those things block the healthy wavelengths and messages from the sun that we need to get. So when people take these breaks, when you go outside, are you in an area where you can take your shoes off and get your feet on some grass or dirt to also get free energy from grounding and walk around a little bit, take some deep breaths and get that sunshine? Can you roll up your sleeves if you've got long sleeves on, or unbutton your blouse a little bit right here to get some light? Just as much exposure as you can get on your skin and your eyes is what's important. And, taking 3 to 5 of those throughout the whole day, then you're getting those messages as the sun is crescendoing up and crescendoing down through the day. Again, in the afternoon, you'll want to get that afternoon red light at sunset. Whether you're in the car, just open up your sunroof or crack your window. The photons of light expand so bigly and are so strong that you'll still get the effects. And then, of course, when you come home, you still need to make sure we're making the nights dark and blocking your blue light. I would recommend for people that are working indoors, in front of computers, and especially in environments where, like, if you don't have your own office or cubicle where you can really change your light bulbs and change your lighting, which is, a lot of hospitals or schools or, big companies where people always have fluorescents and LEDs above you, you don't have a lot of power over, your desk or your cubicle where you can maybe change a light bulb to a full spectrum light bulb or a red light bulb or incandescent. then I would definitely recommend the blue blocking glasses that have the yellow tint, because it's going to protect your eyes from the strain and all the blue light that's coming from the screens and from the bulbs above you. And just remember that on the blue blocking glasses, whether it's yellow, orange, or red, you have to have one of those tints on the lenses to actually be able to do any health benefits. There's a lot of blue blocking glasses on the market now that have clear lenses, and they might be blocking 5 or 10% to be able to market them, but that's not enough to protect your eyes and your skin. And so those are some important tips that people can do. You know, just get up and take those breaks throughout the day. Protect your eyes by having some yellow lenses for blue blocking glasses, and get out and get those light breaks and movement for sure.
Yeah. What are your thoughts? Because you mentioned about glass blocking, you know, the vital UV. So if you're sat in an office with windows and you've got natural light coming in, but obviously it's blocked off through a window, can that be quite damaging as well to the skin?
Yeah, so unfortunately, all of our new modern windows in the world, since companies or the government, whatever path you want to go of how we've gotten there, modern windows need to be more energy efficient. So the old windows that we had that were just like clear glass pane, they would allow all the wavelengths in from the sun. So you would get your blue UV, you would also get your red and your infrared, but that did allow the heat to come in, right? Because your infrared wavelengths create heat. And so since we want to keep our houses more, you know, green and energy efficient, our new windows block out all of that red and infrared wavelengths, which are really healing. So what does that mean? It only lets in the blue light from the UV, and then our screens are only emitting a blue wavelength as well, and our LEDs and fluorescent light bulbs are emitting only a blue wavelength as well. So we're all blue light toxic. And basically the way to equal that into damaging is if somebody was to go lay in a tanning bed every single day, that's only UV light, blue light by itself, and it causes damage, right? It's inflammatory. It can cause cancer and mitochondrial disease and autoimmune issues. And so it really upsets our circadian rhythms as well, because when you're outside in nature in the middle of the day, we do get the blue light wavelength from UV. But at that same time, the blue UV is surrounded by all the other full spectrum colors from the sun. So your green, your yellows, your indigo, your blue, your red, your orange. Those are all being protecting around the UV, and it's a full spectrum. That's what that means, that full rainbow of colors. So our windows are also not letting that in, and it allows it to be a blue light toxicity environment.
Great. Okay. You mentioned earlier about sun cream. So if we look at, obviously we've discussed inside and what you can do to at least mitigate, because I don't think you could, if you're working for someone and you know you're not in control of your space, as you said, you know there's no point in getting too stressed about everything, but do what you can. So we've sort of covered that. So going outside, obviously you want to be out as much as you can. When I go out, I don't wear sun cream at all, and it does worry me slightly. I'm not going to lie. I've got like a small percentage of you know, my thought processes around worry. Is this too much? Am I getting burnt? Am I developing new moles and freckles and things? Should I be concerned about that? You know, these are things that I do look at and think about. But equally, I'm totally convinced that we need as much sun as we can possibly get. So what do you recommend to somebody, you know, who is trying to spend as much time outside that might be a little bit concerned about burning, or you know, it's all over the news and everything you read about the sun is almost like it's there to kill us now, you know? So it can be a little bit overwhelming and a bit scary for people who don't have maybe the education or the information that you've come across over the last few years.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, this is going to be a long-winded answer for sure.
Yeah, let's go.
So yeah, society, government, you can jump on any type of soapbox you want, and we can go there if you'd like, of why now the sun has been demonized so badly, and it's supposed to be this thing that we have to run from and be so scared of. But yet, as you look outside, I mean, the sun brings life to everything, right? The food and animals that we eat and tend to, the weather, the seasons, our light to be able to see. And the sun has been around for, you know, however long we even know, billions of years maybe. And even in religious contexts, let there be light, and light is mentioned hundreds of times in all of our religious texts as well. So how could it be something so bad if it's been there from the beginning of time and really allowed for bacteria and even us as a species to be able to come along and evolve or adapt depending on whatever story that you believe in? So even if you go back in our history and look at our past civilizations and ancient tribes, the Egyptians, for example, the American Indians, the Greeks, the Romans, they all revered and worshipped the sun. And I don't mean just like on the religious specter. They really knew the power and the power of the light from the sun, bringing things to life, allowing energy to be sourced and used for building things for energy or creating, crops and new inventions and production. So that already initially started with our past civilizations. But even in a more modern human history of medicine, we actually used to use the sun for healing. In the early 1900s, a lot of our hospitals actually had solariums attached to them. And so we actually had patios that wrapped around the hospital and like a rooftop solarium where they would roll patients out into the sunlight to use the sun for healing. There was a Nobel Prize given for this, for heliotherapy back in the 30s. And we were using it for like damaged soldiers that would come in with wounds or, amputations, and they would use the sun to heal that. They would use it for rickets. They would use it for the Spanish flu that occurred in 1918. And so we have used heliotherapy and solariums and the sun for healing for a very long time. A lot of things changed in our medical paradigm in our modern world because of the Rockefellers and the Flexner Report. Now, that is definitely a soapbox to get onto, and I'm not sure what your readers know of that history. But John D. Rockefeller was an oil magnate, and he eventually got to the point, of course, wanting more like money and power, like most capitalists do, that he wanted to take over some of the medical paradigm in our country. And so in the late 30s, he was able to get a lobbyist, Mr. Flexner, to lobby the US government to pretty much say that any of our medical therapies that we were using before, so herbalism, plants, body work, massage, chiropractic, acupuncture, the sun, any type of natural modality was, woo-woo and witchcraft and actually bad for you. And we were going to make these pharmaceutical drugs because he had been able to figure out how to use his petroleum from oil to make pharmaceuticals. And they would have the same effect in a way as having a drug to be able to do things. And so they were able to lobby the government to take that on. And because of the money that Rockefeller had, he was able to actually start our medical school system. So they actually influenced colleges and universities to open up their medical schools, but they had to go by the curriculum that Rockefeller and Flexner and his buddies had all come up with to follow using pharmaceuticals. And so they paid for the university buildings, they paid for the textbooks, they paid for the research to be able to show that the pharmaceuticals worked over any of our modalities that we were using before. And that system has not changed now all the way up to now being in 2024. And so all of your pharmaceuticals are petroleum based. And also at the same time, a little bit after the 30s, there was one study, because we're getting back to the sun and skin cancer, I promise. I had to give some of the history first. There was one study done on UV light, and that's what ended up basically making UV light the bad guy that says it causes skin cancer and started the scare of and the fear of the sun. Well, also, guess what every single sunscreen base is made out of? Petroleum. And it's $1 billion industry, just like the pharmaceuticals are $1 trillion industry, and they're all based off of petroleum. So let's look at the study, first of all, that was done in the late 30s on UV light. Let's dissect it a little bit and ask better questions. Number one, there's only been one study done so far, so nobody has questioned it and tried to do other studies. Number two, the study was done in a laboratory underneath artificial lights, not outside with the sun, even though they're trying to study and tell you that the sun is bad. Number three, the study was done on mice. Mice are nocturnal mammals. Humans are diurnal, which means we work off of a 24-hour light and dark cycle. Mammals that are nocturnal work off of being awake at night and asleep during the day. And so the physiological reactions are going to be different than what a diurnal mammal would be, like us as humans. Number 4, they only used UV light bulbs, like a tanning bed light, on the mice. And so, yeah, they grew tumors, and then it made it look like UV is bad. But like I said a minute ago, when you're outside in the sun, when the UV light is out, you have all the other protecting colors of the rainbow, of the full spectrum, protecting your skin, especially that red and infrared. So wouldn't it be interesting to now do a study actually on humans outside in the sun and testing that? Now, when we go to the sunscreen story, 2 years ago, while we were all going through COVID, not 1, not 2, not 5, not 10, but 78 sunscreens got recalled because they had too high levels of carcinogenic material and ingredients in it. So maybe the sunscreen is actually what's causing cancer. We put that on our skin, and again, our skin is a solar panel. It's also our largest organ, and so anything you put on your skin is in your bloodstream within a minute. So it's a toxic chemical that we're slathering all over our face, all over our bodies. It's in every single makeup product, anti-aging cream, lotions, chapstick. I mean, they want you to put SPF on inside the house or inside the building, and even at night. Like, it's absurd. Like, it doesn't make any sense if you just think about it. On top of that, we also have statistics now showing with skin cancer that the whole point of the story of talking about people being light deficient, modern human beings are spending 93% of their time indoors. Okay? Skin cancer is on the rise. So please tell me how it makes sense that people are spending more time inside the house away from the sun, but yet skin cancer is on the rise. How does that work? Also, most melanomas show up on the body of areas that never see the sun. So like men will get melanomas on their legs or on their back. Well, those are usually covered by shirts and by pants. Women will get them on their breast or on their arms, and they're usually covered up by shirts, right? Now, there are women that I even know that have gotten melanomas on their face, but guess what? They've been putting sunscreen on their face since they were like 12 years old, and they get it in their 50s, and they stay away from the sun. They're very pale. Now, another new theory that I came across last year that not a lot of research has been behind yet, but the idea of melanomas and moles, because you mentioned moles and freckles, right? You and I are probably very similar in skin type. I have a lot of moles and freckles. I don't go to a dermatologist anymore ever at all. And I've also realized that my moles and freckles, since changing my light life and getting out in the sun more, change. Some will appear and then they'll disappear. Some will get bigger and then they'll go away. And somebody posted the studies off of Jack Kruse as well. All of the cells that are in our body have a light receptor in it called melanopsin. And we're not going to dive deep into that science discussion. You just need to know that there's a light receptor in every single one of our cells. And that light receptor needs UV light, which means the strong light that's out with the sun. So after years and years and years of not receiving that light cell, those cells are like starving for UV light. And so they get agitated and chaotic, and they might change and shift. And then they start rising to the surface, searching for UV light. So what if melanoma and skin cancer and freckles and moles are actually just our cells coming to the surface, asking for UV light? That really changed the whole context and perspective on skin cancer for me in total. On top of that, the last thing that I'll say is there's been studies of people that live, because I think about this all the time. My grandmother's 87. She doesn't go to doctors. She's never been to a dermatologist. She gets good skin exposure, not as much as she probably should, but decent. She lives in Florida. And her whole skin is like kind of, patchy and moly. Somewhere to like somebody would probably look at her and be like, oh my gosh, you need to go to a dermatologist and get all that checked out. And they've done a lot of studies where people have died, in their 80s, 90s, 100s of just old age, or maybe a different type of cancer or a stroke or something. And they've actually realized that most people had some form of skin cancer in their body, but that's not what killed them. And those people still lived a very long and vital life. Like my grandma's 87, still has cognitive function, still drives, still lives on her own, still walks every day, doesn't go to the doctor, is in no medication. And so she had a long, vital life. So even whenever the day comes that she passes, she might have skin cancer in her, but it's not what's killing her. So in my mind, I'd rather have a long and vital life, knowing that I'm getting the right sunlight exposure, because that's what actually keeps my body running healthy. And if I get skin cancer at 90, at least I've been able to live my life like how I wanted to, instead of hiding from the sun and actually getting a serious cancer or an autoimmune disease or Lyme disease at 30, 40, and 50 and not being able to have a vital life. Okay, that was the long answer. But that's a lot about skin cancer.
If you lived in the UK, for instance, and you went on holiday to somewhere that had really high UV, the tropics, or even places like Spain or Portugal, or whatever, would you say, well, I mean, what would your protocol be in this situation? What would you do? No sun cream, get up, watch the sun set as well, and all of the same things?
Good question to come off of the skin cancer one. Yes, because if you're going to take this advice from me, because this is how humans work, like, oh, the sunlight's good, so we got to do a lot of it, and we haven't seen it in years, you're going to burn your ass and you're going to cause damage, right? So in the quantum health realm, we do have something called the solar callus. And all that is that your body actually has a natural SPF that you can build to protect against the UV. What does that take? Yeah. It takes your eyes and your skin being out in the red and infrared light at sunrise and sunset as much as possible, like chronically out in it. And that will start to build what is called a solar callus. And so that way, when the UV comes out in the middle of the day, you can be protected to where you don't burn with it. Now, I've been doing this for almost 5 years. And so, like, I was actually just at the beach for the first time this year, this past week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday in Florida. So the UV was probably up to at least 9 or 10 on the index. I was outside with I haven't used sunscreen almost my whole life, but no sunscreen, no sunglasses. I wore a hat during the middle of the day when it was super strong, and I never burned. Now, on the very last day, I could tell that my skin had gotten just a tiny bit tingly. It wasn't even pink or red, but a tiny bit tingly. And so that day, during the middle of the hottest part of the day, I stayed under an umbrella with my hat on, and I let my feet or my legs get some sun exposure. So to answer the question, number one, it's going to take time when we haven't been building a solar callus initially. So just use discernment with knowing the early morning light and the late afternoon light is what's going to be safer. So if you go on holiday, which I definitely recommend when you've lived somewhere in the higher latitudes or the UK and you want to try to get some sun exposure, just use discernment. Go out early in the morning and stay out from, sunrise or after until 11 or 12, and then go take a nap or go do an activity, and stay out of the middle of the day sun, and then get that afternoon sun as well, and try to keep that along with your sunrise going while you're on vacation. Use discernment. When you feel your body getting pink or a little red or tingly, you just know, like, now's the time for today that I need to, like, take a break. So throw a shirt on, throw a hat on. I still never recommend sunscreen ever, or sunglasses ever. So, just use discernment by covering up with clothes. If you look at wild animals, or even the tribal systems that are still in existence in Africa or Saudi Arabia or Amazon, they don't lay out all day long in the sun. Like, when it gets really hot in the middle of the day near the equator, that sun is hot. They go underneath their teepee, or they go underneath a tree. The animals find shade. So you still use discernment for your body so that you don't go out there and get too much initially, but you build that up. And so that would be my recommendations. Just always make sure your circadian rhythms are still intact by seeing sunrise and nights being dark. And then just use discernment when you are getting out and getting that sun exposure if you haven't had some all winter, or you're just starting this journey of wanting to get more light.
Okay. So you acknowledge that the sun can be dangerous if it's not respected, and you're not following what you're suggesting about getting sun at certain times.
I mean, to be honest with you, Jay, in all the years I've been doing this and following Jack Kruse, like, he doesn't even really think sunburns are that dangerous. I don't think it'd be smart to probably get chronic sunburns every single day, and that would not be fun. Like, who wants to blister and be sore and, like, not be able to touch your body? But I'm not worried about sunburns or that little bit of tingling as much as I used to be. Like, now the information of how important light is to us, our Amazonian ancestors didn't die of skin cancer. They never got it. So we have to look at what our environment is. Are you still around a lot of Wi-Fi? Are you also ingesting a lot of seed oils? They are very inflammatory and will make your skin burn, and they're in everything.
So when you go on holiday, you're not in control really of what you're eating. So you're in an all-inclusive hotel, you're probably drinking every day, you've got seed oils everywhere. So I guess at the minimum, this is what I do, is I will get up for the sunrise and I will watch the sunset with no glasses. I don't wear sunglasses ever anymore. I used to really struggle in the light without glasses, whereas now it's perfect. I went to Thailand last year and I left my sunglasses at home. I thought I don't even need them, and I didn't once think, oh my God, it's too bright.
Yeah.
So I think you can build that up as well.
Oh yeah, before I even learned about light, I had stopped wearing sunglasses a couple of years beforehand. I think my body just naturally knew, and I believe in that innate wisdom that's in our bodies. But I just got so tired of keeping track of something, like I hated them on my face, I hated them on my head, I hated having to keep track of them. They were $100-something. Like I was just like, I don't need these. These are whatever. And yeah, I haven't worn sunglasses in probably a decade, and I don't miss them. I know an analogy that Kruse uses, and I definitely copy him and use it a lot on my posts or in podcasts, because I think it's just a really easy, important way for people to understand how powerful this message is. If you put a new fruit tree outside in the ground to grow at your house, what does it need? It needs to go in the ground so that it can have the soil and all the nutrients for it to eat. It needs water so that it can drink. And then it needs the sun to be able to actually use that whole photosynthesis process that we learned about in biology school as kids to be able to grow, right? Now, if you went out to that fruit tree and you put a tarp over it, even though it got the fertilizer from the ground, and even though it maybe got some rainwater, but it didn't get the sunlight, do you think you're going to get any fruit? Is the tree maybe going to die? It's probably going to die. So then we look at humans, because we actually have a process that's called cellular respiration with mitochondria. That's the exact same process as photosynthesis, except we excrete CO2 for the plants and they ingest that and excrete oxygen for us. But if we put a tarp on that plant and it's going to die or not give us fruit, what are sunglasses? What are contacts? What are clothes? What is sunscreen? What are walls? It's our tarp. And we can see it. Humans are more sick than we've ever been. And the only two major things that changed in the last 150 years for the human process to evolve and adapt and get stronger are pharmaceuticals and electricity. And all of those conveniences that have come along now have kept us inside and are making us weaker and more dependent on those systems that put them in place.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Okay, so if you were going on holiday and you wasn't 100% convinced to not wear sun cream, is there anything that you would recommend? Maybe coconut oil, or I know you can get like organic zinc-based sun cream with things like different like honey and different waxes and whatever in it as well. Is that something that you would recommend, worst case, just to put your mind at ease, or would you say scrap it, get out there and enjoy it?
I think if you know that you've got to be out in the middle of the day, like you're not able to get out from the sun, I would still number one recommend just a hat and a shirt, some type of cover up. If you're really just struggling with that worry and you just feel like you got to put something on, there are some DIY make your own natural sunscreens that have like coconut oil, carrot seed oil, grape seed oil, and zinc oxide that you can get as a powder, and you can make all that. I've made one before, a long time ago, before I even learned this information. But you just got to remember that anything you put on your skin is still going to be a barrier to not allow those messages to come in from the sun. And so just when you have that base knowledge, you really don't want to have anything blocking that information. But I do think if you're on holiday and you know that you can't get out and you're going to be on the water or something like that, I think something like that would be a little safer than any type of the commercial sunscreens that are on the market, for sure. Like, don't put that shit on your skin.
I wonder if this is something I've not looked into. I don't know if you would have, but animals getting skin cancer, is that a thing, or is it really just humans? And it really does point to what we're talking about here. So when I mean animals that are outside, for significant periods of time, not.
So it's a good question. I don't think any of the wild animals, okay, not domesticated, wild animals, do not get skin cancer. Now, being in the horse industry like I am, and I also had a dog that had all of a white coat, and so a lot of horses that have all white skin or fur, their noses can be really pink, and we have seen incidences of melanomas, but again, just like on the human side, there's not enough research and correct research to actually show what's causing that, because in my question, people get scared of the white fur and they keep that horse inside a stall more than letting them be outside. And so I think if that horse had the ability to build up its solar callus, because you don't see white horses out in the wild getting skin cancer that we know of. There's no money behind that research right now to have people go out and study that. But that's what I know of right now. I don't see dogs getting it, except unless they've been super domesticated. And so just like us being human animals that are turning ourselves into zoo animals, our pets, horses and dogs as well, are staying inside more, and they're also getting more sick and more diseases that never existed before. Wild animals don't have them. And so they're carrying around a general inflammation too, from the Wi-Fi and the Bluetooth and the lights and not going outside and getting in the sun enough. And that's actually led me to, I don't know if you've seen on my page yet, but I'm starting a new company called Equisol. And so I've invented a red and infrared light therapy blanket for dogs and horses. They're not on the market yet. I'm trying to get them manufactured here. So, but hopefully by the end of the year. But it all came from that same idea, like my background in the work that I do, and then learning about light, and then seeing the same connection with animals of like, why are they getting autoimmune diseases and allergies and obesity and diabetes and dying early and cancers? Like none of them got this, and none of the wild animals get this. And so it's the exact same problem on the animal side as well. Good question.
Yeah, it really is a case of the Industrial Revolution and that's created the lives that we live in now has caused a lot of, if not all, of these issues, and then they have the remedies for them as well. So just kind of going back to how we lived 500 years ago even. People say to me, because I'm quite strict on diet and blue blockers and grounding and all of these things, and I say it's just stressful and weird, and I'm just like, but all I'm doing is I'm just doing what we used to do. That's literally it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and we're so indoctrinated by how the way that we live now, but it seems weird, but it's just not. It's the way it's always been. We used to eat food that didn't have chemicals in. So all I do now is I try to buy food that don't have chemicals, and weirdly, it costs more. Why? Buying these things that aren't riddled with these chemicals cost more money. So it's just everything is backwards. It really is. I was going to say, in terms of if we take an example of like the average person who goes on holiday, they'll go away. They will probably drink every night. They'll eat a load of shit. They'll wake up probably, I don't know, 9, 10 o'clock, go straight out into the midday heat. So they're not even building it up. They're just straight in there. They're slapping on all this chemical sun cream. They're wearing sunglasses, and then they blame the sun. And it's just, it does blow my mind a little bit. And if you're talking about doing natural things, people are like, it's dangerous. It's crazy. It's just so backwards.
It blows my mind. Like besides working on horses, I have boots on then, but other than that, like I'm barefoot and feral most of my days. And it's just wild to see people like look at your bare feet in the ground, and they're scared to put their bare feet on the ground because of dirt or like bacteria, or there might be like a bug. And it's just so wild to imagine, it is like things
and this is coming from someone. This is coming from someone that had a tick bite and it ended up with Lyme, and it's actually led you on this journey that's led you back to nature. It's quite weird when you think about it like that, right?
It's a beautiful quantum entanglement. And actually, I've had 3 or 4 tick bites since then, and I have not come back down with Lyme disease. So It has a lot to do with your redox potential, which is, if we still have some time, I'll get into that a little bit. Our bodies and our cells work off of negative and positive charges. So it's just a battery, and that battery needs to be charged. And that battery gets charged naturally from the sun. And that's what truly makes everything in your cells strong. But if we think about like the immune system, if we're talking about people being sick and getting issues, we want to blame the sun and the tick and the bug and the virus and the bacteria. Although mitochondria, we have trillions of them in our body running everything, they're a bacteria. It's kind of a bizarre thing to think about, but we have trillions of bacteria actually running our body. And when you can get your battery charged strong, which is your redox charge, that's a quantum term, your body should be able to fight anything. So that means if you do get Lyme bacteria in your bloodstream, or COVID, or the flu, or a virus, or bacteria, your immune system is supposed to be that strong to then take that, toxin or intruder or invader in, create antibodies, and you might get a little symptom like a fever or feel a little low or something for a couple of days. I'm not saying you're ever going to live life without any of those type of symptoms, but you shouldn't have to come down with a chronic disease. Chronic diseases never existed. You either got killed, by a predator or war or an accident, or, your immune system, for whatever reason, the Black Plague came around and killed a bunch of people, and then people made antibodies and survived after that. There was never a chronic illness. There was not people that had diabetes. There was not people that lived with chronic Lyme. It didn't exist, because our immune system is supposed to handle all that, and that's how strong our bodies are. But when we're surrounded by artificial light all day and not getting the sun, our redox potential gets really, really low. And so the way that I was living my life before, even though I thought I was healthy, I had everything in place to have a low redox to where I got Lyme disease by getting bit by a tick. And that's also why when I healed the Lyme, it was why everything else was still really messed up. My hormones, the fatigue, the irritability, the energy levels, because that stuff was already there before the tick bit me with Lyme disease. And then that just took over. And so even once I got rid of Lyme, all that stuff was still there, showing me that like my body was not running like a Ferrari and at optimal levels. Now it is. And so I can get bit by ticks. I can come into contact with people with COVID or flu or sick, and I don't get a thing. And I can remember information and kick it off like you're seeing on the podcast. Like everything is running like fire's engines on. And that is the difference on the redox, and when we're dealing with diseases and people trying to get their immune system stronger to not get sick or come down with some chronic issue. And to get bit by several ticks again and not have an issue is just proof in the pudding, and it doesn't make me scared to be out in nature and be around those things.
Yeah. No, it's awesome. I believe you. I really do. I think my plan in the end, I don't know how many years it's going to take. I need to, I've got a lot of things to do here still, but my plan really is to try and get out of this country. I worship the sun. I absolutely do. We're going into spring now, and you can feel it. Down my street, we've got all these blossom trees that have just started blossoming, and pinks and whites, and all of these flowers coming up, and it's just like, oh yes, the UK winters are just grueling. And since I've been doing the protocol with not blocking blue light, but mitigating my exposure to blue light, I've noticed that I can get through winters a lot easier. It's not as grueling. I don't really get the sad anymore. I used to get that really bad, and I always wondered, why is that? And now it makes perfect sense. But I try to really capitalize on the sun during the sunny months in the UK as well. And I'll get out as much as I can, try and build up my vitamin D levels. I think vitamin D half-life is like 2 months. But if you're taking like high levels of boron or even borax, you can actually double your vitamin D half-life. So that's interesting. One of the other things I wanted to ask you just quickly as well is these like UV lights or lamps that you can get, vitamin D lamps. Would you recommend those to people, or is nothing really comparable to the sun?
Yes and yes.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
number one, you can never, ever replace nature, ever, with anything man-made. It's just impossible. It never comes close. So the sun, even on cloudy days, is always more strong and more powerful than any artificial bulb that you can buy. However, There is plenty of research behind those artificial lights now that show that it does help people that really struggle, with depression or SADS. The only thing that you want to be wary of, since I mentioned before that UV light and blue light by itself is what's bad, those lights right now only have UV lamps in them. So it's still the same thing of like a tanning bed, basically. So Jack Kruse always recommends, because I'm not a doctor, so I can't really put any type of recommendations out there, but what he recommends is that if you are going to use those, either use them outside when the sun is out, so that way you're getting all the spectrum from the sun as well as using that light. And those lights are strong. You don't need 20 minutes on one side. It's like 5 or 8 minutes and then flip, and then 5 or 8 minutes and then you're done. And maybe not every day, or maybe every other day or every couple of days, and let the body actually integrate that light. If you can't do it outside, then the next less optimal option is to have the UV light next to like a red light panel. And then that way you're getting the red light and the blue light. You're still missing all the other spectrums from the sun, but you're at least protecting yourself some by having that red light on you with the UV lamps as well. So yes, they can be helpful, but use them with precaution and discernment. Maybe do some research on it, or just know that go outside and get in the sun.
Okay, awesome. So a holiday in winter is what you're recommending everyone. Fly down south somewhere, get some sun. I think I think that's probably the most important thing, isn't it? During the peak of winter, just take a week out, fly somewhere, get some sun, and like I said, vitamin D does. I know it's not just about vitamin D, but it does have a half-life. Just when you're getting good quality light as well, I mean, how long can that sort of last in the body? Could you build up your stores, your Redox, as you say, for a few months and then try and kind of ride it until springtime and then you can rebuild again? Or
yeah, so the nice thing about our bodies is how incredibly strong they are. Even our ancestors before, they still had seasons, right? Like they still had to live outside in the winter when there wasn't as much sun or even UV. So our bodies are actually capable of making our own UV light. It's called UVC from the cells. And so this has been studied and known for cavemen or our previous ancestors that lived in caves during the winter where like it was dark all the time. They weren't getting any light. How did they survive or not have rickets, right? Number one, of course, they didn't live indoors at all or around any type of artificial light. So that is a big difference, or Wi-Fi or anything like that. But the way it's supposed to work in the body is that during spring, summer, and fall, when almost everybody on the planet can get some type of UV light and light exposure, we should be getting so much of that every day that it actually does build up our storages of melatonin and vitamin D and cortisol and all that. I believe that, what is the one that's on my slide? I think it's 1 day out in the sun will actually store 20,000 IUs of vitamin D in the liver. And so technically what's supposed to happen is our body has all that storage of vitamin D. And then when we get to our winter seasons where we would be hibernating more, not eating as much, right? And on a more like carnivore ketogenic diet, because if you're eating seasonally around you as well in the wintertime, what's growing around you? Nothing, animals, maybe some roots, maybe some fermented foods, eggs. And so you actually can accept that wintertime of getting cold exposure, still your sunrise and sunset and night, dark at night, low foods, and sleeping more. Like that's the time when our bodies would regenerate. And then your body's going to use the storages of your vitamin D that you made through the spring, summer, and fall to get you through the winter. So it keeps your immune system strong. It keeps you strong. Fasting has already been proven, to show with autophagy and apoptosis to be healthy. But what do we do in modern times now? Number one, we test for vitamin D in the winter, and we're like, why is it always so low? Because your body's using all of the storages that it had from the summer, so it's gonna get low. Also, we only test for one variable of vitamin D, OH25. Your body actually makes 25 different variables of vitamin D. So how do we know which one we're low on, which one we're using, which one we're not? Vitamin D is also a hormone. So if you are supplementing vitamin D, you are using hormone replacement. Same with melatonin. It's not recommended at all. Our bodies can make it itself. You should not be taking it. And so, in the wintertime, our bodies are using that for the storage to replace. But in modern worlds, we still stay inside. We don't see the sunrise. We eat a lot of sugars and cakes and all the things for our holidays. And we call it the flu season, but it's really just a light deficiency, an overload on carbs and sugars, and being indoors more and not getting cold exposure. So I've even been the girl that, like, I used to kind of hate winter and get sad too. Now, granted, in Louisiana, we still get some sunshine in the winter, so I'm grateful there. But the last 2 winters, I've actually embraced winter. Like, I get tired at 7:30. I just go to bed, and I sleep for maybe 10 hours, and my body is regenerating and killing cancer cells and killing toxic cells and anti-aging to get me ready for spring, summer, and fall, where there's more light and more energy and more carb consumption. And that's really kind of how the body is supposed to work. So even if you don't go on like a holiday vacation during the winter, if you embrace the aspects of what winter is supposed to be, so more darkness, cold, less food, your body will actually acclimate and just know it's wintertime. We've got to use all of our storages from the summer, and it's going to last that, 2 or 3 months. But then you need to make sure in the spring, summer, and fall, especially like in an area where you are, you need to be getting as much sun and light as you can during those months to build your storages up.
Perfect. 2 questions quickly. So would you recommend taking vitamin D during the winter only, or would you not at all?
Nope.
Okay, so you wouldn't recommend it at all. Okay. Second one, the importance of eating seasonally. So that's something that we do as well. Don't get me wrong, I might eat an avocado from time to time. They don't grow where I live. But I do tend to eat a little bit more sugar in the summer. I eat potatoes all year round. We're British, it's kind of what we do up here. But I eat a lot of meat, and I'll go more, so in terms of like vegetables and things, I'll eat a lot more when they're seasonally grown. I'll go to the farm shop, whatever's in, I'll be like, I'll have a bit of that. We'll chuck that in a stew or whatever. But I tend to eat as locally sourced and as seasonal as I can. And like what you've just said, I'm getting up earlier in the summer. I'm enjoying longer days. I'm out and about. I'm busy. In the winter, you need to relax a little bit. So trying to kind of follow the seasons as well. Is that something that you would say as well in terms of your protocol, your day-to-day protocol? Would you look at the seasons as well? And is that something that you'd really kind of recommend people to look into and to practice as well?
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, really, when you start learning about light, you're going to start seeing light in everything. And so that is your light and dark cycles on the 24-hour every day. And then also in our seasons that come around quarterly, 3 or 4 months, depending on where you are located on the planet. And, in our modern world, it's just rush all day, every day. And, our nervous system suffers, our immune system suffers, our gut health suffers, and our health overall just suffers. And so when you start looking at like food and sleep and exercise and also tying it to this light story, there's a light story involved in each one of those areas as well. So our food should be grown outside like it is in nature, and it'll have a light story tied to it. So if you live near the tropics, near the equator, you're in Central America or Africa or something like that, you can grow a lot of food and a lot of carbs year round, and you're around so much strong UV that it's not going to bother your system. But if you live in like the UK or Canada, are you going to get bananas in December? No. I mean, bananas don't even grow here in Louisiana. Like, they only grow in tropic areas, but I only consume them in the summer now. And is something like people are going to look at you and be like, oh my God, that's so crazy. Like, I can't have a banana in December. Yeah, it's not going to kill you, but is it a circadian mismatch for your body? And so should you be having them all the time through winter? It's telling your body that it's summer. Just like if you're changing your lights at night and having artificial lights on, you're telling your body it's noon in the middle of the day instead of 9 o'clock at night. That's how powerful light can be. And that's the light code that's in the food of where it grew at what time of year. Our grandparents that came out of the Depression era, they still grew a lot of their own food. My grandma didn't even know what an avocado was because there was no shipping, of it logistically and in the supermarket and being able to have an avocado year round. And what's interesting, Jay, is as your body starts to adapt more to a light life and a seasonal way of eating, you actually become more intuitive with your body. I crave having my bare feet in the grass. I crave having that sunrise and feeling that sun come up in the morning. And now with food, I'm even more, I always followed basic rules that I thought were healthy, but now it's even very intuitively. Like all winter long, I never even touched an avocado this year. Like I saw it in the store and I was like, like you normally have that craving for it because I ate it all the time. Now I can look at a banana, and banana is like one of my favorite fruits, even as a kid. And I can look at it in the winter and be like, yeah, I mean, that would taste good, but like I don't have the initial like raw craving for it from my gut. And like right now in the winters, I crave potatoes and I crave fermented veggies and greens. Like I'll do like some herbs, rosemary, parsley, oregano. I'll do some arugula, lettuce, just because also in Louisiana, we do have UV through the winter. So we can grow some of that here. So I will still have some of that, but I really won't up the carbs, and especially fruit, really until spring and summer. The only fruit that I kind of consume through the winter are apples, and like your grapefruits and oranges, because they can still grow here in Louisiana as well, and they're super great for the immune system. So like February and March, my body craves, like I just juiced some grapefruits today, like craves that citrus for that vitamin C and immune system going into the spring.
Yeah, it's funny because you've obviously we get this push at the moment with vegetarianism and veganism, and I just think when you really look at it, like you say, in terms of the light story, or even for me, just common sense, I just think 200 years ago, if you were a vegan in England in the winter, you'd be dead. What are you going to eat? Yeah, you're going to die. They're like, oh yeah, but you can eat, you can pick some berries that might grow or whatever it is, and it's like you can't live like that. It sounds bad, but when you think of a cow, it's like the perfect animal for us. It sat there through the winter, just sort of grazing and just waiting, turning whatever's around into perfectly nutritional food for you, producing milk, which is when raw is like the perfect food, and you keep it alive and it's preserved until you want to take it and eat it. So it's almost like when you look at it logically, it just makes perfect sense again. But they'll convince you, it's all through their voodoo word magic and word salad, that they're trying to convince you that things that are very logically clear are wrong. And it just, and you find yourself getting tripped up by all of this like academic word salad, and you just sort of put the computer down, go outside, put your feet on the ground, take a breath, and you're naturally back there again. But they're just trying to pull you as far from nature as they possibly can. But I can see why people do get trapped there. It's this person's smarter than me, I'm going to believe everything they say, so I don't have to think for myself, type of thing. So yeah, it is scary really when you think about it.
Yes, and even on that note, people that are listening to this, when they do, don't believe everything I said. Go listen to Dr. Jack Kruse. He's a neuroscientist. He's been neurosurgeon. He's been teaching this for 20 years. Don't even listen to him. He'll tell you that. Go find the research of Albert Einstein, all the different neuroscientists and biophysicists that he followed, the quantum physicists that have known this for years. Go back and look at our history and our civilizations. Go find this research. It's out there. You can find it. You're not going to see it on your mainstream media and news for several reasons, and we won't go into that. But you can Google and you can look up this information. It is out there. It is free. Or you can just listen to me and then just go outside. And as long as you do that, you'll feel better too. But just know that it's out there and you can find this. I'm just not pulling it out of, my hat.
Perfect. Well, this is probably a good place to leave it, actually, unless you had anything else specific you wanted to go into.
No, just, remember the 2 rules of nature. Sunrise is literally the best thing that you can do for your health, no matter what, because it's going to set your circadian rhythms. You can go look up circadian rhythm research. It just won the Nobel Prize in 2016. And it's really coming around. So don't wait for it to come into your doctor's office in 10 years. Take this information and run with it. You need your clocks running on time in your body. So the sunrise does that. It also has the infrared and healing energy and get that light throughout the day. And then you have to make your nights dark. We're diurnal mammals. It's like, that's hard, cold science proof. So there's no denying it. There's no changing that. There's no biohacking that. There's no, I get people that are in denial and they'll say, well, we just adapt. Humans adapt. That's what we do. We've adapted for all these years. Yeah, but now it's too much artificial light and too much artificial toxins, and the adaptation is inflammation. And then chronic inflammation leads to these chronic diseases that everybody's dealing with, and that is our adaptations. And unfortunately, the adaptations are now bad enough from all the years of chronic illness that it's changing the genes. So when your doctors like to tell you that your disease is genetic, there's a half truth to that. Yes, there's been some genes that have mutated and changed, but your genes respond to your environment. Your genes load the gun, but your environment pulls the trigger. So if you give your body the correct natural environment, you can keep those genes from transmuting and changing to give you and your family diseases, which means you can heal yourself and you can heal your family for generations to come. Isn't that what we all want? And guess what? It's free.
Perfect. Where can people find you?
So I have a personal page on Facebook and Instagram under Jackie Jolie. You can find me on Instagram. It's called Jolie in Soul. I'm usually posting something every couple of days or every day on light and quantum health and information, because again, this information is out there for free. So I am just here to share it with you. I do have a webinar if you're wanting like all of this information in a very succinct manner with like graphics and pictures and information that you can keep. I do have a 90-minute webinar available for purchase for $47 on my website at lightshapes.life. And once you get the webinar, it's yours for the rest of your life, and you can share it with friends and family. There's no other paywalls behind it to block it. I want this information in everybody's hands as much as possible. If you are interested in my new product, which will be red and infrared light therapy blankets for dogs and horses, that's not on the market yet, you can follow us at Equisol, EQUISOL, on Instagram and Facebook. The website's being developed right now, but you can go sign up with your email address at equisol.life. You can find me at any of those places.
Amazing. Thank you. Thanks for coming on. It's been awesome.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. Sorry to keep you up a little bit late, but I really appreciate the talk. It was good.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.